everyone, welcome to the B-Side Breakdown. My name is Brett Johnson, and I am your host. This is episode 15 of a podcast where I talk with other artists, musicians, and songwriters about a song they've written that's meaningful to them, that they can give me permission to play on this episode, and then we have a chat and get deep into the why behind it. Today I'm going to be talking to Eric W. Krueger about his song Brushfire. So let's get into it. Here is Brushfire by Eric W. Krueger.
Sunrise burning over on the eastern shore. The picture perfect tragedy cliche blurs the lines between the lonely sea and sky. A simple introduction to the day. It's a new dawn breaking. It's a new colliding on a liquid road, slowly bending down to wash your face. And all the stars collide, the universe is multiplied. You know you're only 20 miles away. It's a new dawn breaking, it's a new escape.
All right, and that was Brushfire by Eric W. Krueger. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back to talk more with Eric. Stay with us. All right, and we're back. Let's bring in Eric to talk about the song Brushfire. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I appreciate you sending this over. I've known of you and your music for so long, and obviously we've played shows together, I think close to 20 years ago, and just kind of all that history and connection, and hearing this new song Brushfire, which I think is new, off of a record I think called Shed Songs, which I can't wait to hear all about. There's just such a great raw, just stripped down thing about it that just connects with me really deeply, and I love it. Which, I think I repeat myself. It's funny when I'm listening to these episodes, I'm like, I think I love every single thing that I hear, but I do. I mean, I really mean it. It's such a positive and awesome sounding, feeling song, but would love to hear from you. Why is it one you wanted to talk about today?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, man. And that was really my goal, is to have that come across as like a stripped down vibe to pretty much the whole record, but Brushfire in particular. Shed Songs actually put out last summer. So it kind of came about after a few years of inactivity with the whole original rock and roll thing. So at least like some pauses in between. Sunday Flood ended, and joined some various bands, and then actually was able to join another band called Leading the Blind, which kind of fulfilled some original rock like cravings that I had. But right around like COVID time, my father had passed away, And that kind of was like a wake up call to obviously a lot of things, all the emotions that go into, something like that, a big loss, of course.
Yep.
But it kind of gave me some new perspective on just, my approach to music and, just wanting to, I guess, strip things down a little bit. And I had never really done anything by myself. I've had years of just various, collaborations in various forms from, like I said, a bunch of original rock stuff, which is really loud and, obviously has its place. I love to, make my ears hurt, but
Sure.
I also love to strip things back just with an acoustic guitar and just my voice. And I don't know, about 7 years ago or so, I moved out to the country and we have this barn. So that's where the title of the record comes, but that's really where I go to, kind of just cool off a little bit and escape the usual day-to-day work obligations, family obligations, etc. And that's really like a kind of a cool, creative, safe space for me to just write. And that's where these songs kind of came from. So just, like that big, huge open space and letting the natural reverberations kind of talk to me a little bit with these
Yeah.
songs as they formed and came together. And Brushfire was actually, just going back to my dad's loss and everything,
Sure.
obviously a lot of perspectives on life and everything, and having my own family, wife and two kids, and having this little hobby farm. When I was going through all the emotions of that and then putting all this effort into, how I would approach some new songs, I just sat back for a minute and kind of reflected on a lot of history and where I, kind of came from and all of that sort of stuff. And obviously music was a big thing,
Hmm.
I think for, obviously a lot of people, but it popped Sunday Flood into my head, knowing that I started that band with, my best friends in high school when we were, 16, 17, 18 years old and doing it for as long as we did. That was really where the lyrical inspiration came for Brushfire. There's a lot of just callbacks to, various song lyrics from over the years, titles, things of that nature, and just like the general vibe of, that new rawness of like energy when, four people get into a room or five or however many, but in our case, four.
Yep.
And just all of a sudden, finding that wavelength and connecting. I don't know, it's like lightning in a bottle, right? So I don't know, it's a vibe that obviously I think, we continue to chase,
Yeah.
in our own respective ways, but this is the way that I was able to do it and kind of put that in a little sort of like love letter format to that band and my bandmates.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for that. The
Yeah.
one, I'm sorry to hear about the loss of your father.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and and I understand the how that inspires creativity kind of in a different direction and things. I kind of had a similar experience. My father passed away in 2009, and
Yeah. Sorry as well, man.
thanks. And it inspired kind of a whole different approach for me where I frankly I just champion your approach so much more than mine because it just sounds so great. Yeah, I just really like it. And it feels like you just described it. I mean, it feels like yeah, you're in this kind of open space, and there is kind of this I don't know resonance and catharsis that's going along in it to help kind of cleanse and purge and expel and share and create. And that for me is just really, really wonderful for me to connect to. I tried doing the same thing, except I did it in this little 12 by 12 practice space in Oakland, and tried to be a one person, 4-man band with analog instruments. And it was really, really challenging and hard. And,
Right.
and, I, and I made like 2 demos out of it and was so just like frustrated and disillusioned with the whole thing. And it was, really expensive to have a practice space in Oakland and that kind of thing. So I was like,
Yeah.
I had to abandon
Well,
that approach, but
yeah, I admire that approach. I mean, I thought about doing that as well, but I think just, it just seemed right just with the way that this angle was in
mhm,
terms of like the room and what it did to me. I was like, man, my voice carries in this thing and the guitar sounds so great in this thing. And
yeah,
versus like I had a lot of ideas in my head of like, yeah, I can, rudimentary play drums and I can
sure,
play the bass to, I guess well enough to be dangerous. That was actually the first instrument I played, um, which is kind of a side note. It's how actually Sunday Flood came to form. Um, I replaced John McEwen in a band called Semicircle, which predated Sunday Flood. He
Okay.
went off to college in St. Paul, and left the Appleton, Wisconsin area. And the guys were looking for a bass player. And I was like, man, I think I can get away. So I had a couple of years of stealing my brother's bass and messing around with it.
Sure.
And I was able to I was able to play one show before we ultimately disbanded, and we just knew we were going to go into a different direction.
Hmm.
And next thing you know, we were calling John back after he was in school for a couple of months and saying, hey, we've got this new direction we want to go in, and you're going to come back on your breaks, and we're going to do this band. And we played him a riff over the phone, and he's like, hey, I'm coming back Thanksgiving break, and we're gonna do this. And we ended up, he came back, we all had our Thanksgiving dinner. We came back to Mike's basement,
Sure.
and we ended up just knocking out like 4 or 5 songs in a matter of hours. It was crazy. So
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, so that kind of a long-winded roundabout way of saying that the full band approach was something I was thinking about with this
Sure.
album.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just made sense to just kind of strip it down and try it this way. So pretty happy with how it turned out. And then that's actually how I went to record it too. I worked with a guy by the name of Amos Pitch,
Okay.
who's from Appleton. He's in a couple of amazing bands from the area, one of which is called Tenement. The other one's called Dusk. They're both doing very well in their own respective angles. But he has a studio called Crutch of Memory in town, that's
Hmm.
actually in a house that they live at. And he totally appreciated my approach as well, and just has some great microphones and some great rooms. And it seemed to really, I think, bring out the approach of how I wrote the songs into recorded form. So he totally got the vision of it and just kind of let me do my thing and kept it pretty raw and just like immediate. And I think it succeeds in the recording of it. At least that's the feedback I've received from people. So that's obviously really cool to hear.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's so a couple of things that I wanted to ask then. You're based, okay, so I know originally, right, Appleton, Wisconsin, I think is where you called home. Are you still in Wisconsin? Is your farm somewhere in Wisconsin in the area still?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm about 10 miles outside of Appleton
Oh,
now. I was
okay. Okay.
out here about 7 years ago, so still in the Fox Valley, Wisconsin. Yep.
Got it. Got it. Great. And then did you record? So was this recorded in the studio or did he bring his kind of recording rig and his mics to your barn and you recorded it there?
No, we actually, so yeah, he's got a studio in Appleton,
Okay.
that's actually based in a home format. So it actually used to
Okay.
be years ago like a storefront. So it's got it was like an old retail store, from what I understand, and it's got all these just various rooms that he uses for live rooms. And I was able to record in a really cool room that's actually on sort of a busy street. You can actually hear in one of the songs a truck going by, just very, very, very slightly. And we wanted to leave that in because it just sort of fits that vibe of this, intimate sort of like you're in the room with me,
Yep.
sort of thing. And we heard it, we're like, we got to keep that. It's just awesome. But yeah, so we did there's actually a piano track on there as well, and that was just recorded in one of the other rooms, and then he's got his mixing console and everything in the basement. So it was a really cool setting and experience. And it's actually like not the first time I've recorded in these various home studios. Sunday Flood did actually a couple of times with a few of our various records. Like one was in Green Bay and one was down in Waukesha.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know, there's something about having, going to an actual professional studio, which we've done as well, but having that home sort of, I don't know, just perspective, it kind of carried on with the vibe of the shed, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Got it. So that's, I'm still just tripping on the John McEwen story. That was so great. just,
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
gonna
man.
keep
It
going
was-
back to that. I'm like, right. I keep forgetting John was from Appleton because for some reason I've always equated him with really just the Lion Mankato thing, right? So it's like
Yeah,
I always keep thinking he's from there. I'm like, no, 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 that's right. He's from Appleton, and I didn't know that story at all the way you just told it. So that's super fun to hear. And
yeah,
it's cool that you did the studio like you did. I've recorded in a couple examples or scenarios like that too, and I've always found that to be there's like this sort of homey vibe to it that also just makes it much more relaxed and less rigid. And I don't feel like we're all taking ourselves too seriously, but we're respecting and honoring kind of the craft and the art and the songs at the same time. And it just has this much more organic feel to it. But
totally.
um,
Absolutely.
yeah, I super resonate with that. One thing I wanted to ask you about then, so I feel like I've been seeing for a while now, through social media. I confident you're on Instagram and Facebook and all of that, but I've seen posts for, Eric Krieger music, and it's like solo performances you've been doing for a while now, like beyond this record came out like in summer of 2023, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So I've been performing. I guess it kind of goes back to the whole flood thing and the
Yep.
inactivity. It actually sort of stemmed from initially we were doing, it goes back to John actually with like lineup changes with Sunday Flood. We changed our rhythm section. So there was a period of time where Mike Allen and I, who's, I've known since 1987, who's
Mm-hmm.
like just one of my closest collaborators, outside of John and some other people over the years. But um, it really like forced us to not do Sunday Flood for a minute. We had to like teach parts to people, and we had to almost like reshuffle the way that we wrote songs. And because obviously four different people bringing their ideas to the table, and then you take two of them away, and then you got two new ones in there. It's like, okay, what's going on here? And
Yep.
we were going back and forth. Do we change the name? Do we, like change the whole concept? Do we change instruments?
Yep.
And I ended up starting this side project called Halloran, which was more of a stripped down, essentially just version of Sunday Flood, just without a rhythm section. It had his like trademark EBow and delayed guitar, and then my acoustic guitar as a change. And that was really where a lot of this like songwriting approach, I guess, started outside of like the way I would approach writing for a rock band,
Sure.
like a post-hardcore thing or
Yep.
whatever, sort of thing we want to call whatever it
Whatever.
is, but
Yeah. Sure.
insert word. But once that sort of changed, when Mike moved away a couple of times, he's been back and forth around, and that's really, one of the reasons why we're not doing Flood at this point right now, but hopefully we'll be able to
Oh,
change that.
okay.
But when Halloran had to sort of shift, when he moved away a few times to the cities, and then he moved to Alaska, and then ultimately Iowa, where he's at right now, I was like, well, I still have all these songs that I wish I could do with Mike, and we could do it online, but would it still work? So that was really where like these Shed songs came into form, was writing these songs, and I would play them out periodically, even during this cover band I've been doing for the last 20 years called A Town Unplugged. We play like yacht rock stuff and like old Neil Young and um CSNY and
Sure.
Seals and Pops and all that sort of stuff.
Fun. Summer breeze,
When
baby.
Yeah, right on, exactly. When the guys wanted to take a break, there'd be some other folks in the crowd that would say, "Hey, you should play, some of your original stuff," and that got me the itch. Then I ended up getting a few more invitations to do it, on a solo front, playing, various festivals around town. Appleton has this festival called Mile of Music every summer,
Mm-hmm.
um, from the last about 10 years or so, and ended up playing that yearly. And it was going over, pretty well. So over, since I put this record out, all of a sudden I had the itch to play these songs in a different format. So I actually recruited the guys from A Town to back me up. So they took a whole new, I guess, life. And that really brings to where I guess the next step in this project is going to be like, I'll still do, solo shows here and there, but it's really been fun to have a band with me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like, just backing these songs and adding some layers, obviously percussion, and, adding a bass guitar and a lead electric guitar to the mix has been really neat. So that stuff's on YouTube for now.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll be hitting up the studio definitely this winter. I've got, plenty of ideas and songs that are pretty much ready to go. So it's a matter of just getting studio ready. But yeah, hopefully by spring we'll have a new, we call it the Sheesh, Eric W. Krieger and the Sheesh,
Nice.
which is just a new animal, and I guess a new vehicle for these songs.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so what's fun to hear, I have to kind of circle back to something you said earlier that just yeah, I completely remember that dynamic when you're talking about when, um, like the rhythm section for Sunday Flood changed and you bring in a different rhythm section and you had to figure out like, okay, well, wait a minute. There was originally this group of four and we all had these ideas and we wrote all this music together. And now we got two new people and, different sets of ideas. And wait, do they learn it exactly how we did it? Wait, do we continue on as the same band? Do we, all those things? That's kind of exactly what happened with Drop Nickel when it transition to Remover.
Yeah.
We lost our drummer and lead guitar player, and it was just basically Jer Fink and I. Jer's still playing a Goodnight Ritual in St. Paul with Dennis Asher and Lance Reed and Jake.
The stuff is rad.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love their stuff. And and then Jer and I continued on. We tried Drop Nickel as a 3-piece, and that didn't really work out. And then we realized, we need to find some different people. And then that's when Jeff and Mark came in, and we became Remover as a 4-piece. And we did decide to change the name just because, yeah, I mean, the feel was different. It wasn't like it was the same band. We borrowed, like we took a couple songs that we had finished in Drop Nickel, and we're starting Remover with them. But then we kind of wrote the rest of those together as the group and kind of kept going from there. So, I mean, I totally understand the conundrum around that. It's like, well, what do you do? But that's how we chose to do it. And then ironically, that's when, apparently you saw us with Sunset Black and, Red Over
Yeah.
Lunar at the Uptown Bar that, may it rest in peace.
Yeah,
That it's
exactly.
a Apple store or something.
Right.
Anyway, and thank you for giving me the background on how the solo acoustic stuff came about, because I didn't know you had a cover band going, which I would frankly love to come see, because that's just totally my, kind of guilty pleasure wheelhouse of sing along music. Like I just love to
Yeah.
sing harmonies with all that stuff. And so,
Right on.
that'd be really fun. But the fact that
Absolutely.
they were asking you to, hey, why don't you play some of your original stuff? And I just got to tell you, hats off to you for doing that. I am such a chicken shit in that regard that I'm terrified of the idea of getting up just me and an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And it's just
It
because I've never done it. And it's like one of those,
Sure.
I need to do it. You know what I mean?
You should. I mean, I totally get the hesitancy. It's definitely still not one of my favorite things to do. Ultimately,
Sure.
I mean, obviously there's like this whole camaraderie aspect that you miss
Yeah.
of not having a band with you, but yeah, just it's I mean, on a stage and the lights are on and a PA is fired up and like there's no masking with distortion or
Yeah.
like loud drums or anything like that. It's like, well, this is what is going on, folks, and this is what your ears are going to get.
Yep.
So it took, definitely some getting used to, especially like I said, even when I started doing it with Mike, at least was with me and, doing these cool layers of delayed guitar and EBO and stuff. And I was like,
Hmm.
man, I can still get behind this acoustic guitar and let it rip. But then all of a sudden there he went and, the Band-Aid came off and I was like, well, all right, this is it. So
Yep.
yeah, I'm still not overly comfortable with it, but it's definitely something that's very, I don't know, like liberating in a way too, right? Like there's like this freedom to it, and it's almost like it's you're showing off, who you are. It's a very intimate vibe. I definitely recommend it when you're when you're ready.
Yeah.
If yeah,
No, I hear you. And all of that, I mean, as far as the confidence side, for your stuff, it really, there's no question for me. Like I didn't question whether or not you were comfortable doing it, just listening to even just Brushfire. I mean, it's like, and the depth of your vulnerability in it also is just mind blowing to me, that it seems you are so comfortable in that space and just so open, and that is just the most like attractive thing about the whole thing, and what really pulled me into it. It doesn't sound, there's nothing that feels, and I don't mean to say this like I would expect this from you, because I don't, but in some cases I hear people and I'm like, yeah, it sounds kind of like it's in a box. It's really limited. They're sort of limiting themselves, and it's kind of contrived a little or whatever. And none of
yeah,
that came through. It just felt like this natural, fluid, again, vulnerable, open book kind of expression. And to hear all that in it and to take that away just is just like, man, that is awesome that you have access to that and that you can share that with everybody. I think is just brilliant.
right on. I appreciate that, man. I mean, that was the goal of really this project, and the fact that you're able to pick up on those vibes is a just very refreshing to hear. It's awesome because that was really the ultimate goal, and I definitely know what you mean. There's some times where like, okay, singer-songwriter guy with an acoustic guitar again. There's
Yeah.
so many, and it's like, is it coming from the right place? And I hope that that's the ultimate goal, is to have that come through to the listener. Like this is something that's real, and obviously a representation of everything that it was supposed to be. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's also a reflection on my own sort of fears around it, that I mean, I've learned a lot about sort of my songwriting. I mean, obviously over the years and things, but more recently, just in the like how much of this was just in a safe, controlled way instead of really just letting loose and letting it be real, you know, and just letting it really just come out as it does instead of, yep, I'm super comfortable within these boundaries, you know what I mean, and not really pushing it. And to me, that's sort of taking it to a solo acoustic place would definitely kick that door open. So
Yeah,
I'm taking encouragement from your music to go explore that myself.
right on.
Um,
Do it. I
yeah, I will.
can't wait to hear when you do it. It'll be awesome.
Sure, man. Um, so, and it's awesome that you shared with what's going on with this. So are you doing the same, is the Shed Songs turning into the full band thing with, you know, Eric W. Krieger and the Sheesh, or is it a different set of music, or is this included in that body of work that you're working on for next spring?
Yeah, so right now we've been playing out live, playing Shed songs, and
Okay.
actually going back to the Halloran catalog, which has kind of been cool. Ultimately, in a perfect world, I would have, Mike here with me playing his parts on the
Yep.
Halloran songs, and obviously to that point, just reuniting Sunday Flood and doing that again. But in the meantime, it's playing these Shed songs, just with these guys bringing their ideas. I've pretty much just let them do what they feel versus saying, this has to be in this time signature and the bass line needs to do this and you need to follow this pattern, what have you. I've let these guys, just from the years of playing together in this cover band, we've kind of organically figured out a way to to listen to each other, be it a song that we didn't write or obviously now songs that I did. And there's a lot of trust there. And the way that they come prepared and like have their own perspective on these tunes has really been refreshing. So live we've been doing that with the Shed Songs album, and then yeah, like I said, a couple Halloran tunes. And then yeah, the plan is to go and record another album, and I'm going to guess that at least a few Shed songs will end up on it, but I've got plenty of other material that
Sure.
I think he's gonna, maybe take over on that. And who knows? It would be cool just to have, even if it's just for me and the guys. I mean, to have a whole re-recorded album in
Yep.
full band form. So that might be something that we tackle down the road too. So a lot of options, but it's been a lot of fun so far.
It sounds like it, and I look forward to keeping track of all that as it goes forward. All right, and let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more with Eric W. Krieger. Please stay with us. All right, and we're back. Let's jump back in with Eric W. Krieger. How do people find you then? How do they find Eric W. Krieger and the Sheesh? Like, do you have a
Yeah.
centralized hub somewhere where people can go online to get all the goods about you?
Yeah. So Bandcamp, ericwkriegersongs.bandcamp.com,
Okay,
Eric W. Krieger Songs on Facebook and on Instagram, on the X, if that is what it's called now,
sure.
whatever Twitter
Yep,
is. And so that's really the really main focal point of I guess this solo project, for lack of a better term, and then with the band. And then also leadingtheblindrock.com is where you can find information about that rock and roll band. Original tunes, again, with one of the guys who's in the Sheesh is actually in two of the other bands. So the A-Town Unplugged cover band, and then Leading the Blind. That's actually he's the main singer-songwriter in that.
okay,
And that's been doing that for, yeah, over 10 years now, which has been a lot of fun. It's more of I guess, like, say, grunge influenced, like
sure.
kind of that 90s Seattle scene. There's some Soundgarden type vibes to it, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, that sort of stuff.
Fun.
Been a lot of fun, and actually that is where that kind of ties into another project that, well, yeah, they're all sort of related, right? So David Kiley, who took over John's spot in Sunday Flood after a couple other people played bass.
Yep,
He was pretty much our bass player from 2005 to present.
yep.
He plays bass in Leading the Blind with me.
Oh,
And then Mike St. Clair, who some people might know from a band called Scarlet Escape. Of course, we
yeah,
did the split on Blue Worm,
yep.
one of our closest favorite rock bands of all time. Unfortunately, they disbanded a number of years ago, but he joined Leading the Blind. So it's Marty Paschke and then David Kiley and Mike St. Clair and myself in that band. So that's
Oh, awesome.
leadingtheblindrock.com. Yeah, a lot of fun. And then Mike and I, St. Clair, are also working on a new sort of, I guess, post-hardcore-ish original project.
Hmm.
Been trying to get it off the ground But with busy schedules, it's kind of been a little challenging, but we've got, a handful of tunes that we've worked through already, and it's been a lot of fun. So hopefully that's going to be something that takes shape in 24.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And nothing, I swear I saw something recently about something happening with the Sunday Flood event. So I must have made that up in my brain. So there isn't anything happening pending for Sunday Flood right now.
Not actively. I mean, we've talked about it. We were able to play a couple of shows in 2017. We did our 20 year in 2015, and that was actually with John, one of John's bands, Short Timer.
Sure.
That was our first show, actually. I think they played in Appleton with us, so it was kind of cool to have him there. He obviously played. We did like a quick like 3-4 song like homage with the original lineup, which was super fun. Bringing it back to 95,
Yeah.
our 20-year celebration. So having those guys play was just awesome. Then we played Self Evidence 20-year show in
Yep.
2017, actually as a three-piece because Mike was unavailable.
Got it.
Uh, so that was obviously like it was the best, of course, because I mean, like so many amazing bands and like all our friends we've always had,
Sure.
it's such a love for the Twin Cities, just obviously with John being, there, and like we started the band with him in the line, and shared so many good times with those guys playing in Mankato and in St. Paul and Minneapolis, and meeting all of you guys, and
Yep.
obviously Self-Evident, and that whole show was just awesome, at the whatever Uptown VFW it was. And
Yeah.
we totally missed Mike being there, but we had to do it. There was no way we could turn it down, I
Sure.
mean, and thankfully we were able to pull that off. But since then, there's been a couple of offers to do things, and it's just we haven't been able to line things up schedule wise and logistically. But we're currently, maybe what you saw is I've been kind of like archiving and documenting and putting things out on Instagram and Facebook of
Hmm.
like old show pictures and flyers. And I actually found like some take sheets from our first album, from Simple Studios in Green Bay that we recorded.
Yep.
I've been really amping that up lately. Just knowing that our our anniversary, so to speak, is coming up on Thanksgiving.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things that I have all this stuff that I've thankfully kept over the years, and maybe that's going to be the thing that sort of gets us to maybe revisit our availability in 24, and maybe we'll be able to do a show or two here and there. But we definitely all miss it. It's super fun, and there's been a vibe of that band that has just been, we've been able to, through all the lineup changes, there was never like this steady, consistent thing. It was always moving to the Twin Cities, and then for myself and Mike moving back here, and then he moved back to the Twin Cities again, and then moved back here, then he moved back to the Twin Cities again, and then it was, like I said, Alaska and Iowa, and lineup changes and whatever. But over the years, the impact, I think, just from how the band touched people has been something that's kind of surprisingly, I don't know, not only nostalgic, but it's just cool to hear that we get messages from people still pretty regularly about how that touched them. So kind of cool to hear, and hopefully we'll be able to do something within the future, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hope so too. And I think it might have been that post you were talking about, like the sheets from the studio in the past. I think that might have been what I saw and somehow equated
Right.
that to something new was evolving. But
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah,
awesome. Um,
yeah.
so one other question that I had for you is when you were recording in the shed, what kind of were you just well, let me ask you this. The in Brushfire, did you record the guitar and the vocals separately, or did you actually just record it and sing it at the same time?
It was at the same time.
It
Yeah,
was. Okay.
I just felt like this is the way it's got to be. It's like how I wrote these songs. I didn't want to do it with a click. I just wanted it to be like, insert like yourself into a room and you see somebody pick up a guitar and start playing and singing. That's how I wanted it to come across.
Yep.
So I just thought that would be the best way to approach it versus laying down an acoustic track and then going back and doing vocals. I had a whole bunch of like harmony ideas for vocals that, I was thinking about going back in and doing, but I was like, there's just something about just doing this organically as it is, both things together, and just letting it be. We only had to do just a couple of tracks with like multiple takes, but overall it was like one take for the most part. Just very natural and organic, and how like I said, how it would maybe come across as if you saw me just writing them real time.
Oh, that's brilliant. Beautiful, beautiful. And that record is available now on Bandcamp, right? Is that
It
the
is.
best place
Yep.
to get it?
Yeah, and then it's of course streaming on all the various platforms as well too. So
Okay, good.
yeah.
Good. Well, Eric, thank you so much for taking the time on this afternoon and talk to me about all that. It was just wonderful to catch up with you and hear what you've been working on. And man, you're so prolific, and there's so much, so much coming out of you. And I just really am excited about what's next for you with Eric W. Krieger and the Sheesh, as well as every other thing you're working on. So we
Well,
just look
dude,
forward to
thank
that.
you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And likewise, man, I can't wait to hear what you're doing next. I love everything that you've done. Like I said, been a fan ever since, I was dragged to that show and I was just like, what is this? I mean, the whole approach, the whole vibe was great. I just, your presence as a front man. And yeah, I mean, you obviously a mover, you're playing bass and singing, which I always appreciate. But the songwriting was so great. And, just meeting all of you guys in the Minneapolis area was something that, I keep very close to me, even though like we never get to see each other much anymore, as time goes
Yeah,
on. It's like I think this connection that we all share. There's definitely a magical time with Blue Worm and all the friendships formed. So definitely appreciate you having me and look forward to hearing what you got coming up next as well, man.
absolutely. I appreciate it, Eric.
Three Crows Club presents B-Side Breakdown.
All right, and that wraps up another episode of the B-Side Breakdown. I want to thank Eric W. Krieger for coming along to talk about his song Brush Fire. I also want to thank Adam Coulong and Carrie Bosel for helping me put together the jingle you hear at the beginning and the end of this episode. In the background, you're listening to a track called Chin Ramp from The Search for Animal Chin, legendary Powell Peralta skate video by the A&B team. Thank you guys for the permission to play that. Coming up next, we have Jason Herbold, a really good friend of mine who has a project called Perfect Female Type, and his song Bizarre Faith, which we will give you a quick sample of here in a minute. Please subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Be good to each other. Have a safe holiday season, and we'll talk to you on the next one. Thanks.